This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
A good Erev Shabbos, everyone, as we start our fourth shir in Orchos Chaim lha'Rosh, learning number 7 and number 8 in the directions that the Rosh has gifted us in how to lead a proper and successful and prosperous life. We are sponsored by Yoel Klugman and family, Lili Nishmas Meshulam Ben Moshe and Chava Bas Yehuda Kohen Klugman, for the successful shidduchim of their children, Lefur Shalema, for my Rebbetzin Miriam Liba Bas Tavora, and Chaim Ben Rachel. They should have a Lefur Shalema B'Sech Shecher Yisrael. Now, number 7 and number 8, the Rosh bunches up together, and this is a very interesting. And it lends itself to much speculation why he put this together. Let's learn it. It includes many, many important pieces of information. He starts off, Sheyizoher mimichshol hanedarim. We should be careful from the stumbling block of vows. Now, nowadays, we don't make many vows and oaths. That's a formal discussion in the Torah. A vow is when somebody says, Kikar zeh like a carbon, this loaf should be, to me, forbidden like a carbon, using a method in halacha called hatfasa, and an oath, as we know, is saying, I swear, and some oaths are accompanied by Hashem's name. We know how serious an oath is. It's the third commandment, not to take God's name in vain. And we know that the third commandment says, Kilo yinakeh, one will never be cleansed. Now, taking Hashem's name in vain in an oath is something that the Torah says you'll never be completely cleansed for. The Mefarshim say, the commentaries say, because normally if a person does tshuva, the sin is erased. But since over here the sin written down says God's name can't be erased, so the sin will never be totally erased. Nowadays, we don't make vows, formal vows and oaths. We also cover ourselves very carefully with making a Moser Modah before Rosh Hashanah, saying that a proclamation that our vows should not be taken seriously ahead of time. We say the Kol Nidrei Yom Kippur night, which again shows how important the subject of vows is, that the discussion that we start the holiest day of the year with is about vows. But even though we don't vow, we do promise. I promise you. And we give our word, which is also important. And the Rosh says, be careful that when you give your word, that you don't break it. And then he goes on and switches the topic, seemingly to a totally different topic. And from hurting people, from cheating people, hein b'mamain, whether in monetary matters, hein b'dvarim, or with words. Now, this is a very important subject. Now, cheating people is important if you're a businessman. If you have a store, we know that the Torah says that it's very important to have hin tzedek, ve'efot tzedek. You have to have honest weights. You have to be careful when you weigh something that you deduct the price of the box. You're not charging people. Here, somebody buys expensive cookies, the box doesn't weigh, is not worth the cookies. You have to deduct the weight of the box, right? We have to check the scales. We have to be careful that we don't overcharge. Right? That's Oinoas Mammon. Many people, this is not applicable to them. They're not in business. But it still could be, even if you're not in business. Let's say you're a teacher, and you don't prepare properly for your classes. So then you're cheating the students. You're cheating the school. A Rebbe who doesn't get enough sleep in the night, and therefore he's not energetic, enthusiastic, and dynamic with the students. There's all different ways of cheating people. But then we come to something which is applicable to everyone. And that's hein bidvarim, be careful not to hurt people with words. Now, on the surface, if you would ask somebody, what's worse? Somebody that cheats in business? Somebody who overcharges? Or somebody who says something not nice? You'll say, well, cheating somebody financially is worse. I mean, if somebody picks your pocket, you don't have anything to do with him. If somebody calls you a name, okay, listen. But a pickpocket, a purse snatcher? I don't have anything to do with such a person. So we would say on the surface that Einas Mammon is worse, and we would be completely wrong. The Gemara says that Einas Devarim is worse than Einas Mammon. Hurting people with words is much worse than hurting people in their money, in their pocketbook. Because when you hurt somebody in their money, you're only affecting their money, their assets. But when you say something not nice to a person, you're hurting them in the heart. You're getting them in their body. And then it also says, Ze nitein lihi v'ze lo nitein lihi. One can be compensated, returned, and one cannot. You know, if you overcharge someone, you can make amends and pay back. But if you say something not nice, the wound can never be totally removed. Rav Miller would say, in his 10 Commandments of marriage, never say to your wife, I want a divorce, or I hate you. Because you could apologize 100 times, and Rav Miller would say you have to take a trip to Simpson and spend a lot of money. But still, you said it. It's out there. It's a wound that can never be removed. It's lo'nitein lihishavai. I know that I had somebody once in one of my shiurim that told me that a Rebbe once told him, when he asked something in shir, that's the dumbest question I ever heard. And he said, it's 40 years later. It's a man that was almost 60. He says, it's 40 years later and I still feel the pain from what that Rebbe told me. It's not nitein lihishavai. And therefore that's why we have to raise our children that in the schoolyard they never say something not nice to their friend. How could you drop that ball? Why were you chosen on our side? We got all the luck. I don't understand why you come out and play. You have 10 left fingers. Now, besides the fact that it says, if you embarrass someone habitually in public, you don't have the afterlife, God forbid. But also, it's Einas Devarim. Now, this is especially important when it comes to husband and wife. A husband has to be careful not to say things to his wife that will cause her pain. I don't understand why the house is so sloppy. Don't you have any pride in yourself? Now, a husband that tells that to his wife, and she sheds a tear, a small tear. It says, be careful from causing a wife pain, because by noshim dim also mitzuya. Her tears come quickly. And when Hashem sees a lady's tears, the person that caused it could be in very big trouble. We have to be careful. It's the same thing with a woman. Her husband comes home from work, he had a very tough day. And she says to him, you know, I could never count on you. I thought you would stop off by the store and pick. I can never count on you. Those are words that are not nitein lihishavai. It rings in the husband's ears. My wife said she could never count on me. These are things that we have to be so careful about. The Rosh says, be careful from einais habriyos, from hurting people. It's so important. Now, if you're a parent You have to set an example. And you have to be careful from hurting your children's feelings. Because you're teaching them, you're modeling proper behavior. The same thing is true with a Rebbe, or a Mora, or an English teacher. We're modeling the behavior that we expect them to follow. And then it says, and here the Rosh does something very surprising. Umikin asam, umisin asam. Be careful from people's envy and from people's hate. Now, we would have thought when the Rosh is telling us how to live, first he would tell us, don't be jealous and don't hate. After all, it says in the Torah, lo yisachmoid, lo yisisaveh. It says, lo yisisna es achicha bilvavecha. So we would think that the Rosh would say first, don't be envious of other people and don't hate other people. Right? The Torah practices mind control. And it's not, the Constitution doesn't tell us how to think. The Code of Hammurabi doesn't tell us how to think. The parliamentary procedures of countries don't tell us how to think. But the Torah says, the Torah tells us even how to think. But the Rosh doesn't say that over here. The Rosh says, be careful from other people's envy and from other people's hate. Now, Tais Yom Tov says that Zet Toli B'Zeh, that make sure people don't envy you, because if they envy you, it will lead to them hating you. So here the Rosh teaches us, don't flaunt things in front of people that don't have it. Here's a person, he's out of work, he's driving a jalopy, and you come over to him and say, I just got my new lease. You want to come with me and take a ride and kick the tires and smell the fresh smell of leather? You're oblivious to the fact that this man, he can't even afford to get an oil change. And he's green with envy. That green with envy is very dangerous. Because when he's envious, then he can come to dislike you. One leads to the other. And it also is an entry, it allows the entry of the ayin hara. Ayin hara is a real thing. It says 3 things cause a person to leave this world. And one of them is ayin hara, an evil eye. Because Hashem says, I didn't give you extra in order to cause other people pain. So if your extra is causing other people pain, I'm going to take away, God forbid, what's extra. So you don't want to cause other people envy. You have a great marriage, you don't have to show it in public. Because other people are miserable at home. They're screaming. So you don't have to broadcast it. That doesn't mean that you don't behave nicely to each other. Adarabah, you want to teach people how to behave nicely. But you don't have to show things that you have to say, well, you know, my wife and I, we're romantics, and it keeps on growing, especially when you know that the other person is unhappy at home. Be very careful from people's envy. You know, this is not something that people look at. You know, that's why the discipline of chess is such an important discipline. Because chess teaches you that you're not only supposed to think about what you're going to move, but you have to think what's in your opponent's head. What's he planning? So you could defend. So you could avoid his traps. So that when we have to know that we don't only, the Rosh is teaching us over here, we're not only supposed to be careful not to be envious of others, we don't want to cause people to envy us. A woman also. She makes herself very pretty, and other women are jealous of her. She has to be careful. Not only that she doesn't want to attract other men's eyes, but even the envy of others. Unnecessary wearing of jewelry at the wrong time. I couldn't help it. I had to put on this piece. Yeah, be careful. There are other women that can't afford it, and they get jealous. And then they dislike you. And the Rosh says, you'll say, well, if somebody dislikes me, it's their problem. No, the Rosh says avoid sin asam, avoid other people's hate. Because people can hurt you. People could hurt you, cause you to lose a job, cause you to lose a shidduch. People could talk to Hashem in pain and cause you harm. You have to be very careful, because we're not lily white. You have to be very careful. Avoid people's anger. Avoid people's hate. Now, one other item about this for today is that many ask, like the Orchos Chaim, of why the Rosh puts together the subject of vows together with the subject of hurting people and causing envy. The Rosh says, the Orchos Chaim says there's a root. Why, if a person is not honest, if he doesn't keep his vows, that's a person that's false. He's not careful with falsehood. If he's not careful with falsehood, with God, with vows, and with his own honor, his own integrity, he won't be careful when it comes to Oinas Habrius. He won't be careful when it comes to hurting other people's and being false in business. It's a good piece of advice to a businessman that before you go into business with someone, see if they honor their word in general. Because if they don't, then you can't trust their behavior in business as well. We want to thank you for joining us. Remember to learn the Mishnah, 718-906-6471. Just started brachas. Also, if you'd like to sponsor the share this week on the Haggadah, $300, $360 to be a postal sponsor, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful day.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.